Hi everybody, this is Dee at Aloha Astro, and today we are looking at a full moon in Aries on October 1st, 2020. And the full moon occurs at 5:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's take a look at what I've written for today's forecast. Full moon in Aries, Thursday, October 1st, makes the usual emotional intensity of a full moon more immediate and personal, as the moon in the cardinal fire sign, which has rulership over the first house of self, and says, I am, opposes the sun in relationship-minded Libra, and forms a quincunx aspect to Mercury in Pluto-ruled Scorpio. You may be uncomfortable with the challenges you face in communication with others, as well as the conflicting feelings and thoughts within you. The aggressive and reactive nature of the fiery Aries moon transit, backed up by Mars retrograde in Aries square to Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn, activates confrontational and defensive behavior. But you dislike the destructive and burdensome weight of carrying fear, anger, and hatred. Two wrongs don't make a right. Wise words to consider before you allow the fire of impulsive Aries to burn uncontrolled. Venus in Leo trine to Mars in Aries and Jupiter in Capricorn trine to Uranus in Taurus indicate you can create better ways to interact with others in a positive and productive way. The Sun in the Venus-ruled sign of refined artistic and diplomatic Libra enables you to tame the wildfire of Aries and restore inner or outer harmony through art, music, or dance, and by practicing proper social etiquette when conversing. The simple words please and thank you can help you connect with others for a win-win rather than a war. So, I found this beautiful painting. This is, I think, from the 1800s, and courtesy of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, where it was on exhibition. A poet who, I don't know how to say this name, Yasumasa, playing the flute by moonlight, subduing the bandit Yasusuke with his music. So basically kind of embodies the energy that I was looking for today when I went looking for an image to represent the full moon and how we might be feeling. And I feel like we've got more of our baser instincts, the lower self, really active right now with Aries energy, particularly while that Aries energy is under stress, and its highest level of acting and behaving is finding it. It's not easy right now to be in good Aries mode. It's a lot easier to be in negative Aries mode under our particular full moon transit right now. But if we look toward the sun opposite the moon, and the more refined air energy of Libra can express itself if we do tap into what is more perfect within us, or what is more harmonious within us. And for many people, they can achieve that state through music or art or dance, either by creating it or by watching it and enjoying it. It can raise your vibratory level to a place where you're not going to want to engage in the negativity, and you may even be able to have an effect on other people because you've raised your own energy. So let's take a look at the Planet Watcher website, where we can see the transits of all the planets. We still have a very scattered sky with a little bit of everything going on, as things are in multiple areas right now, creating a lot of energy, a lot of exchange of energy between the planets. And of course, those red lines that you see, the square and this opposition, are being felt very strongly. We have a weak cardinal T-square with the moon as well to Jupiter and to the sun, but it's not a strong one because we've got 9 degrees here, we've got 17 degrees there. That's just within that 8-degree orb of allowance. But you may still feel it. We definitely feel the cardinal tension of people wanting to be right and nobody wanting to admit they're wrong or to even acknowledge the other person, and that's a challenge. Sometimes it can take an outside party, such as an expert or an authority figure, to say this is the way it's going to be, whether the people involved in discord like it or not. Sometimes it takes an outside influence to be able to determine who wins, whatever way it's going to be. Hopefully you don't get into any altercations where you have to call upon authorities to settle your differences, or if you're considering creating something like a lawsuit, think about all the work that's going to go into it and whether you really want to put in that effort. Now, the deciding factor between what you do has a lot to do with principles and whether you have the strength and the courage to take on a challenging person or a challenging situation. And sometimes we are meant to walk away from things, and other times we are not going to be happy unless we see something through and actually stand up for what we do believe is right. And there are some favorable aspects in here that can support your courage. Venus in Leo makes that trine to Mars in Aries. So if you need to take an action that's going to be challenging because of that square, Venus can help you and guide you. And if you really are right and something is extremely wrong and any injustice has been done, or there's a reason to react and respond and set things right, then Venus is very well aspected right now with just about everything else, with the North Node, with Mercury, with Saturn and Pluto, with the Moon. These are kind of quiet, fading. At this moment, it's not a strong yod in here, but there's still a little bit of an echo of it. We had it the last few days, and we have another yod that's also fading, but maybe you are meant to be a warrior who changes the course of destiny in your life or somebody else's life. It really depends on what the situation is that you might be in conflict with, and whether you want to put yourself out there. There's good reasons for doing good things. And here we have another trine, again, a kind of a quiet one. It's not particularly strong because of the distance there, but we have the planet of change and a planet of growth. And both Jupiter and Venus are well aspected right now with planets that are telling you that there can be a new way of doing things. You can create a change, you can put in new form or structure, you can basically go up against something very big and actually make something happen. Sometimes Mars retrograde gives us a chance to go back over something, just like any retrograde planet does, and Mars is very action oriented. So if something's come up and it's a major challenge and you thought you were over that, done with that, on a larger political level, things like prejudice and the control of people's reproductive rights, things like that are coming back up in society, and we have to look at what's correct, and we have to take a stand and speak out against things that are wrong, so that we do not lose our freedoms. And the planet Uranus is very freedom focused, and it can bring changes. Maybe we've become a little too complacent with all the things that we have taken for granted for a long time, and maybe now it is time to fight to hold on to the things that we value, and that we don't want to go backwards in time where people lose their freedom and lose their rights. So that can definitely be motivation for following through on the supportive aspects from Venus and from Jupiter. If you are being a warrior and you're being a warrior for something good, then the planets definitely support you in that. Examining whether you are capable of going the distance or whether you're doing something for the right reason comes through these two different quincunxes. Mercury in all or nothing, black or white, right or wrong, Scorpio, a high road, low road, is making a quincunx to the moon, and the moon joins Chiron. So you even have to consider whether putting yourself out there is going to put you at risk in a way that you're not going to be able to be there for the people that need you there, perhaps. What is too selfish here versus what is the thing that you absolutely have to do that might be resulting in making sacrifices, or if you take your time and energy away from one thing and direct it to another, then somebody's going to wind up with less of you. So you have to think carefully about putting yourself in harm's way or the ability to follow through. I can recall when I took a life-saving water safety course, and they really reinforced how before you ever decide to jump into water on your own without any tools like a surfboard or a life preserver ring or anything to help you, before you go for a rescue all on your own, you have to make a decision whether you're going to actually be able to save that drowning person or whether you might get out there and wind up being another drowned person. So that's the kind of energy here with this aspect. Can you do it? Can you step up and actually do it? Otherwise, it might be better to back down, not have that confrontation, not make a scene, not go after a cause, and look towards self-protection and self-preservation because you can see that you're not ready or capable. So examine things very carefully before you make up your mind or open your mouth because of Mercury and Scorpio. A lot of times in society, the actions that we take have repercussions, and sometimes we have to be answerable. We have to be able to justify why we said or did something, and that is definitely an aspect that would reinforce that. So don't go demonstrating unless you have somebody lined up to bail you out of jail. And the same thing here with the Sun in relationship-minded Libra makes quincunx to Uranus and Taurus. And are you prepared for the relationship, perhaps if it's a relationship, being different? Are you ready to do your part or admit your part in it that led to things being the way they are? And now are you ready to do the work of something? Turning to a partner and telling them that they need counseling, but maybe you don't want to go for counseling, might not help your relationship. Whereas if you agree to go to counseling and your partner goes to counseling, you probably will have a better time in moving forward in the relationship. And that's just an example of how this is an important decision that you might be facing as well. Are you prepared for how things can be different? Are you willing to own your part in it? And are you willing to do the work of it toward changing things in a constructive way? And sometimes we're not. Sometimes we've used up all our energy. We're done. We don't really want to. But then give up the fight and let it go and walk away. And don't keep engaging the other person or making them feel terrible or whatever for the end of the relationship. So those are interesting aspects there and there. And on a larger level, this quincunx going on with Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn in Capricorn to the North Node, and then the North Node in turn to Mars retrograde with that sextile, and a sextile to Venus. You create your your path, or you choose your goal here, and there may be two different options. There may be more than one option because of the mutable energy of Gemini, and you have to ultimately do what is best for you. It may not make everybody happy, or you may find that there are roadblocks or challenges or work involved in your decision in getting to where you want to go. It's not necessarily going to happen easily. Mars retrograde in that square with the Capricorn planets definitely shows that you might have to jump through a bunch of hoops if you've made your mind up to do a particular thing, even if it's a good thing. Change a job, go back to school, move out, whatever it is that you're wanting to do. You may have a lot of red tape or a lot of hurdles to get over before you actually achieve what it is that you want. A full moon always brings something to culmination, brings it to a head, and generally we feel like we have to finally get something done or completed. So if there has been any procrastination or lingering things that need to be resolved, the pressure is really on you with the personal energy of Aries to make up your mind and do it, whatever it is that you need to do. And whether it's your career or home and family life, or friendships, relationships, whatever area of life the moon and the sun are sitting in right now are definitely going to be highlighted. And you would have to look at your natal chart to determine what houses they sit in for you. You will generally have the overtones, though, of self, which is Aries, and other, which is Libra, and finding the balance or the compromise between the two. And you can even look at possibly the balance between, the lower self and the more refined self with that opposition, and how to bring out your best nature. Obviously, we want to get along with people. Life is easier when we get along with people. We also need to be able to live with ourselves and not feel as though we're betraying ourselves, or our values are not being reflected properly in our relationships. So you may be having to make up your mind and decide on all kinds of relationships. If you feel out of alignment and you can't correct either yourself or the other person or the job situation or whatever, then the full moon may bring something to a head. Now, if you are thinking about any major shifts or changes, please keep in mind that on October the 14th, Mercury will go retrograde, and for a time between October 14th and November 2nd, we will have both Mercury and Mars in retrograde. Mercury comes out of retrograde at about 14 degrees of Libra, I believe, on November 2nd. And then we have Mars come out of retrograde on November 14th. But while we have that double retrograde going on with faster moving, a thinking planet, planning, thinking, communicating, and action taking. Be careful in travel. I would definitely not go buy a new vehicle unless you absolutely have to, and expect that there may be changes in plans, but we're not up to the new moon yet where I would be talking more about all of that. Just be aware that a couple of days before we talk next, at the next lunation, we're going to have Mercury turn retrograde. And in many ways, I've been hearing from people that it feels like it already. There is a shadow zone. I don't always feel the shadow, but I think that we're more aware of the shadow right now for two reasons. Because Mercury is loosely opposed to Mars, and Mars is retrograde, and it's also very action oriented. So we try to do things, and the appointments canceled, or we get there late, or we get a flat tire, or the other person, cancels on us or whatever. And that all feels like Mercury retrograde. And Mercury in Scorpio, which often doesn't see the gray area between things. it tends to look at things from one extreme or the other. And that can put added pressure right now on the decision-making process. It's a fixed sign. It's a deeply intuitive water sign. And it will be there for a little while longer after it retrogrades. Let's open the book and see what we have with how long it's in there. So Mercury will go retrograde at 11 degrees of Scorpio. It moves back into Libra at the 28th of October, right before the full moon. And then it's direct at 26, I was wrong on the degree, 26 degrees of Libra when it gets to November 2nd and stations direct. So we have it in Scorpio for a bit, then back into Libra. If you block out anybody and there's lack of communication, and sometimes I think no communication is communication, actually. There may be a lot of telepathic energy going back and forth where you're thinking thoughts at each other but not communicating. Then there may actually be a reconnection verbally when we see October 28th roll around and Mercury goes back into the sign of partnership, and it's an air sign, and there may be time then for either reconnection verbally to understand each other, or maybe some final closure and making up your mind about a relationship. I expect there's going to be a lot of vibes going on with Mercury retrograde in Scorpio and Mars in Aries, and people are going to be thinking very loudly at each other and definitely picking up on each other and feeling it. So mind your own energy and what you're putting out there in the world, because our energy does attract itself, so if you go out into the world all angry and agitated and upset or in a bad mood, then you might have a very bad day with negative experiences with people. If you go out choosing to be peaceful, calm, self-contained, under control, alert and aware, and to not let things bother you, basically go still and calm, then you're going to probably have an easier time with more flow. So do be aware that you can control the energy to a certain extent of these retrogrades. You can definitely control your responses to things. And one of the easiest little turnaround tricks you can do, even if you're saying it sarcastically, is to say, well, thank you, universe. In all things give thanks, and sometimes the gratitude energy is what actually changes a situation. And even if it's not the way you wanted it to be, bless the situation and what it's teaching you or what you're gaining from it, or look at any one little good thing that you can find in it, and you might be able to shift the energy by practicing gratitude. There are financial overtones with Scorpio and with Taurus energy, and we have a weak opposition right now, but we definitely will be having it a little bit stronger in the days to come. And you want to think about your money with Mercury about to retro in Scorpio, which rules the 8th house. It has to do with investments, inheritances, taxes, other people's money. And it opposes Uranus in Taurus. And Taurus rules the 2nd house of personal finances and your dollar per hour job, self-worth, self-esteem. Look closely at the values that you share with other people. And that might be a determining factor in any type of a relationship, whether you're on the same page value-wise. Not just, are you earning the same amount of money or whatever if you're choosing a partner, but what's important in the relationship from the perspective of spiritual values, moral, ethical values in your relationships and the people that you align with. And that might be another way that you will feel Mercury and Uranus during this Mercury retrograde approaching. You may be able to change something about your financial situation as well, but it's going to come through actually close examination of what you might be very fixed and stubborn about and need to look at doing differently, or let it go, or be open to something new. And that might be a shift for you on the financial level. So lots of complication. We could talk for a while on this very busy chart, and both the highs and the lows of the planetary energy at this present time. I do like this nice little sextile here with Mercury and Venus. There can be some nice words or nice thoughts or flirtation if you are in pursuit and looking for a relationship. But under Mercury retrograde, with Mars retrograde as well, avoid having first-time sex during the Mercury retrograde time period, because you will be creating a chart of the moment that will affect the forward motion of the relationship. And during October 14th to November 14th, there's 2 retrograde planets for part of that time and 1 retrograde planet for a little bit of that time, and it doesn't bode well for the future progress of the relationship if you natalize a major event in the relationship. So watch out for wedding dates in that time frame, watch out for first-time sex during that time frame, and let the anticipation build and look forward to after November 14th. We do go into a lot more free and clear energy as we move into later November and into December. And okay, let's take a look at the Sabian symbol for the degree. The moon is at 9 degrees 8 minutes of Aries, so we round up to 10. This is a lot of word salad, and it just gave me a lot to think about, so I don't think I'm going to try to relate it to anything for you. We already went over the transits, and just sit with the words and think about it and see if it applies to your life or how you can apply it to your life. A teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images. Revision of attitude at the beginning of a new cycle of experience. This phase is the 5th of the second fivefold sequence, and in it we find expressed the capacity to restate the problem inherent in the first phase, i.e. the problem of focusing one's energies upon emotional drives and cultural values, which exclude far more than they include. The subsequent stages of development taken together have added considerably to this attitude. As a result, there arises in the consciousness a desire to reformulate at a new level much that had been taken for granted because it indeed originally had been an evolutionary necessity. The very concrete, emotion-arousing images of the past can now be reinterpreted as symbols with a wider scope of meaning. At this 5th stage, a new dimension of consciousness is discovered, revealing higher possibilities of experience and mental development. This is a phase of abstraction and of emotional allegiance. There's a lot to think about in there, and definitely seems to apply to the complexity of what we're going through at this full moon in Aries. Anyway, this has been a long one, and if you've watched it to the end, thank you for being patient. And if you would like me to work with you to look at what's going on in your own chart, you can do that here at my site, alohaastro.com. The schedule appointment button will show you when I'm available. Take care, be safe, especially when you're out in public or out on the road.